Okay guys, I've going to cover the remaining part of this book, which would be the second part, and I hope so. It would be on the book Developer Step-by-Step JavaScript, the third edition by Steve Suehring, and the publisher in the name of Microsoft. I'll quickly move towards that part which I left earlier in my first video, and that was the use of, we know that we can use the normal HTML syntaxes in writing the code, starting from HTML, the body, and you have the closing one as well. You have the header, you have the body, you have you can use the title as well. HTML, head, title, body, and closing, all of them as well. So with the help of JavaScript, you have to write document.write, and within brackets you have to use it, whether it is string, whether it is a numeric value, you can use it like it is, but first you have to say it by document.write. So we are just going to cover in our chapter we know about that. Okay, working with the variables and data types. So you have numbers, strings, booleans, null, undefined, and objects. So working with numbers, numbers in JavaScript are just what you might expect them to be, numbers. However, what might be a surprise for programmers who are familiar with data types in other languages like C is that integers and floating point numbers do not have special or separate types. All these are perfectly valid numbers in JavaScript. Okay, do not have special or separate types. All these are perfectly valid numbers in JavaScript. The last example, O multiply D, is a hexadecimal number. Hexadecimal numbers are valid in JavaScript, and you won't be surprised to learn that JavaScript allows math to be performed using all of the listed number formats. Okay, that's good that it allows all the formats. So the hexadecimal, okay, XD to be specific, 0 is a number performing hexadecimal math with JavaScript. So you just have to write giving the name as variable h, I, and you just multiply the two numbers, and the result would be in the hexadecimal number, and in this case it would be 28. Variable h, variable I, you multiply these two and put it in the variable j. So when going to multiply, you get the number on the web page. Your numeric functions can also be performed using is, nan. The first test is there are two tests. Okay, with the help of the test 1, you'll able to actually generate a code. Document.write is that a number plus is nan 4. That's obviously is not a number, false, it's a number. And in test 2, you, instead of giving a digit 4, you give a word 4, so that will return a value true. So these are the two cases. In numeric constants, you can use the infinity, number maximum value, number minimum value, number negative infinity, number positive infinity. The math object is a special built-in object used for working with numbers in JavaScript, and it has several properties that are helpful to the JavaScript programmer, including properties that return the value of pi, the square root of a number, a pseudo-random number, and an absolute value. So that's the case. You can use the math object to generate or return a value of pi, the square root of a number, or a pseudo-random number, and an absolute value. So yet again, it's the syntax is document.write with math.py. Dot notation is so named because a single period or dot is used to access the members of an object. The single dot creates an easy visual delineator between elements. For example, to access a property that you might call the length of a variable room, you would write room.length. Variable room, okay, so that will returns obviously 4, I believe. So dot operator is used primarily in many programming languages. Yep, you're right. The single dot creates an easy visual delineator between elements. Okay. Several other properties of the math object can be helpful to your program. Some of them act as functions or methods on the object, several of which are listed in table 4.2. You can obtain a complete list of properties for the math object in the ECMA 262 specification in this. Select function properties of the math object, and math.random returns a pseudo random number. Math.abs returns the absolute value of x. Math.powerxy returns x to the power of y. Math.round x returns x rounded to the nearest integer value. Working with strings. Strings are another basic data type available in JavaScript. They consist of one, technically 0 or more characters surrounded by quotation marks. The following examples are strings. Hello world B, this is another string. The cow says moo. The talking clock says the time is 12 noon. Everyone had a good time was the official slogan. So you can use escaping quotation marks. If you use the same style of quotation mark both within the string and to enclose the string, the quotation marks must be escaped so that they won't be interpreted by the JavaScript engine. A single / character escapes the quotation mark, as in these examples. I'm using single quotation marks both outside and within this example. They are neat. This is a great example of using double quotes where you within a string that's enclosed with double quotes too. So it's working with strings and with escaping quotation marks. Other escape characters are these one, which we may use to get the returns as we require. Okay, so using escape sequences in Visual Studio, Eclipse on others editor, open your sample page. Within the script section, place the following line of JavaScript. Document.write hello TT and hello goodbye. And string methods and properties. JavaScript defines several properties and methods for working with strings. These properties and methods are accessed using dot notation, explained earlier in this chapter and familiar to many programmers. Alert, this is a string length dot length. This is a string dot length. The length property on the string object gives the length of a string, not including the enclosing quotation marks. The length property can be called directly on a string literal, as in this example. This is a string dot length. Obviously it will give us the length of the whole this alert. So these are the methods and the properties. What we have learned, just a recap, has also very necessary, because normally we go through the books, we normally go through all the text, but we have to remember as well. In any case or any time in future, when we're going to actually apply ourselves to any program, or even we're going to teach, if it's possible for any prospective candidate to get a learning from us, we can obviously impart the knowledge as been conceived, so that it may help just to clarify the ideas, the concepts, so that the candidate can move in a right direction. So math.random, math abx, is absolute, the power and the round are given. Working with strings, escaping quotation marks. Okay, other escape characters are also given. Using escape sequences within the script, place the following line of JavaScript. Document write okay hello goodbye. String methods and properties, these are given. My string, substrings, the string 3 means that this is a string, so then this position 3 would be s. So substring 3 to 9, all the digits or in between the position or starting from the position 3 till 9 are included. And also slice 3 mean you just have to remove the all the positions before the position 3 and you get the resultant. And with slice 3 to 9 you get remove the all the positions before 3, and after 9 you get the resultant. So this is how it has to be done. And if my number is greater than 18, do something. Okay, consider the statement if my number is to do something. A Boolean expression is used within the if statement's condition to determine whether the code within the braces will be executed. If the content of the variable my number is greater than the integer 18, the Boolean expression evaluates to true. Otherwise, the Boolean evaluates to false. Null is another special data type in JavaScript and it is most important in most languages. Null is simply nothing. It represents and evaluates to false. When a value is null, it is nothing and contains nothing. However, don't confuse this nothingness with being empty. An empty value or variable is still full. It's just full of emptiness. Emptiness is different from null, which is just plain nothing. For example, defining a variable and setting its value to an empty string looks like this. My variable is equal to this. It isn't empty, the variable my is empty, but it is not null, okay? So null is a special data type. Null is simply nothing. It represents and evaluates to false. When a value is null, it is nothing and contains nothing. However, don't confuse with this element by being empty. Okay, an empty variable is still full, it's just full of emptiness. Emptiness is different from null, which is just plain nothing. Okay, good. It's okay. Undefined is a state, sometimes used like a value to represent a variable that hasn't yet contained a value. This state is different from null. Although both null and undefined can evaluate the same way, you'll learn how to distinguish between a null value and an undefined value in Chapter 5 using operators and expressions. This state is different from null. Although both null and undefined can evaluate the same way, you'll learn how to distinguish between a null value and an undefined. Okay. Objects are special enough to get their own chapter. I still discuss objects here briefly. JavaScript is an object-based language. As opposed to a full-blown object-oriented language, JavaScript implements some functionality similar to the object-oriented functionality, and for most basic users of JavaScript, you won't notice the difference. Objects in JavaScript are a collection of properties, each of which can contain a value. These properties, think of them as keys, enable access to values. Each value stored in the properties can be a value, another object, or even a function. You can define your own objects with JavaScript, or you can use the several built-in objects. Okay, objects are created with curly braces, so the following code creates an empty object called myObject. Variable myObject is equal to this. Here's an object with several properties. Excuse me, just for the my cough is so serious. So nothing like that, but it has to be my apologies. Here's an object with several properties. DVD catalog. Identifier is equal to 1. Name is Coho Vineyard. Objects are created with curly braces. So the following creates an empty object called myObject. Variable myObject is this. In the braces. Here's an object with several properties. Variable DVD catalog. And identifier is equal to 1. Name is equal to Coho Vineyard. Okay. The preceding code example creates an object called DVD catalog which holds two properties, one called identifier and another called name. The values contained in each property are 1 and Coho Vineyard respectively. You could access the name property of the DVD catalog object like this. Here's a more complete example of an object which you can also found in the sample code in the file object.txt. Create 4 new objects. Okay, variable star is empty. Create properties for each of 4 stars. Star is Polaris is a new object, Deneb new object, Vega new object, and Altair object. Examples later in this book show how to add properties to these objects and how to access properties. There's much more to objects. Okay, so you have to create an object, you have to add the properties of those objects. So this is one of the way that you can add in the object and the properties. You've seen in the previous example how to create an object with a name. You can also use array elements that are accessed by a numbered index value. These are the traditional arrays familiar to programmers in many languages. You just saw several objects, each named for a star. The following code creates an array with 4 elements. So that is the new array. The star 0 is Polaris, star 1 is Deneb, Vega, and Altair. The same code can also be written like this using literal notation represented by square brackets. Var star is Polaris, Deneb, Vega, and Altair. And arrays can contain nested values, creating an array of arrays, as in this example, that combines the star name with the constellation in which it appears. Okay, so it is just about the objects, giving it the properties and defining and using variables, declaring variables. This is one of the example. Variable x, my variable the counter 1, and you can use a semicolon at the end as well. Variable names can contain uppercase and lowercase letters as well as numbers. Okay, but they cannot start with a number. Variables cannot contain spaces or other punctuation. Okay, with the exception of the underscore character. Okay, the following variables name are invalid. Variable. So declaring variables, you just variable first counter, variable new variable, variable new dot variable, and var is equal to var with this. Take a look at the preceding example. Whereas the first three variable names are invalid because characters are used that aren't valid at all or aren't valid in that position, as is the case with the first example. The last variable name var is invalid because it uses a keyword. For more information about keywords or reserved words in JavaScript, refer to example chapter 3, JavaScript syntax and statements. You can declare multiple variables on the same line of code as follows. Variable x, y, and zeta. These can be initialized on the same line too, where variable x is equal to y is equal to hello, and